Good. A little warm up. Oh, the summertime is coming, and the trees are sweetly blooming, and that wild mountain thyme grows around the bloomin' heather. Will you go, lassie, go? And we'll all go together to pluck wild mountain thyme all around the bloomin' heather. Will you go, lassie, go? Welcome to The Voice of Reason with Robert McNeily. Today we celebrate not only the summer solstice just around the corner with our Irish friends, but Juneteenth. It is a federal holiday in the United States of America, and it is commemorating the emancipation of enslaved African Americans. Juneteenth marks the anniversary of the announcement of General Order Number 3 by Union Army General Gordon Granger on June 19th of 1865, proclaiming freedom for the enslaved people in Texas. And we are honored to celebrate it here on The Voice of Reason, as we believe deeply that freedom is for everyone. And thank you, Texas, for having that holiday, that celebration in the forefront for years and years until it became a federal holiday. Sadly, some have made it into racial division, but we here are all about those conservative values, those common sense values here on The Voice of Reason. The Republican Party, in fact, founded right before the Civil War in the mid-19th century, in the 1800s, in Ripon, Wisconsin, in fact, to stand against slavery and the evils that became of it. To also stand for marriage, traditional marriage, against polygamy. It's important to celebrate these things and important to remember it here on the right side of history. Welcome again to RSBN's The Voice of Reason with Robert McNeily. We'll dive in depth to Juneteenth and the history that it entails, but today also marks the 250th anniversary of the Continental Congress commissioning George Washington as the commander of the Continental Army. This post by the Library of Congress. The commission signed by John Hancock, President of the Continental Congress, and Charles Thompson, Secretary, is a national treasure to the Library of Congress. It is currently on display in the Two Georges exhibition, which will be proudly displayed on view all the way through March 21st of 2026. So if you have a trip to Washington, D.C. coming up, be sure to visit the Library of Congress to see this great exhibit. Washington was selected over other candidates based on his previous military experience and the hope that a leader from Virginia, the beautiful Commonwealth, could help unite those colonies and the colonists. He left for Massachusetts within days of receiving his commission and assumed command of the Continental Army in Cambridge of July 3rd, 1775. So plan your visit to the Two Georges, and you could do that at Library of Congress. That's loc.gov/visit. And I will probably be doing that myself. As you know, if you are a watcher of Right Side Broadcasting Network, your humble correspondent, really does love history and all that this day, Juneteenth, entails. What does Juneteenth mean to the GOP? 7 years before the Civil War began in 1854, Senator Stephen A. Douglas of Illinois and fellow Democrats pushed through the Congress the Kansas-Nebraska Act, which allowed slavery to spread throughout the federal territories. This was really at the disgust of those, especially in the North, and what led to a new party in the United States. Many Americans recoiled in horror at the prospect of more slavery in more places. This prompted some to form this new political party known as the Grand Old Party, the Republican Party in Ripon, Wisconsin. Now, at first, they called themselves the Anti-Nebraska Party. Later on, they changed that name to Republican. In its inception, the Republican Party had one dominating purpose: to stop the spread of slavery, or in the words of Abraham Lincoln, to place slavery in the course of ultimate extinction. Republicans like Lincoln emphasized and promoted these ideas enshrined in the Declaration of Independence. Enamored with the settled science of their day, scientific racism was mocking and rejecting those ideas led by Democrats like Stephen Douglas. Now, in 1860, Lincoln became the first Republican president of the United States by dividing Democrats into different factions and defeating Stephen A. Douglas, who 2 years prior defeated him for the United States Senate in a run in the prairie state of Illinois in 1858. Millions of Democrats refused to accept that electoral result. Sound familiar to 2016? Instead, they launched a war against the United States. The bottom line is that without the Republican Party, Abraham Lincoln would have never been elected the 16th president of the United States. And without Lincoln as president, you would not have had the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863. Without the Emancipation Proclamation, there would be no Juneteenth, even though on June 19th in 1865, when the Union Army reached Galveston, Texas to read the proclamation 2 years after Lincoln was assassinated. Juneteenth is your day to shine. Republicans don't ignore it, embrace it, celebrate it, and I'm glad for one that it is a federal holiday because these values enshrined in our founding documents all led to this moment. It's your story to tell. It's a beautiful story. It's American history. So God bless you. Celebrate Juneteenth today, regardless of your background, your color, your creed. It's a day worth celebrating, and the Voice of Reason wholeheartedly endorses that. We have a great show tonight for you with special guest Miss America Abby Stockard. Can you believe it? She is a student at Auburn University. Auburn, Alabama, the loveliest village on the plains, also happens to be the home of Right Side Broadcasting Network and the Voice of Reason with Robert McNeily. We'll also continue our presidential series featuring Gary Barv, the first declared Republican candidate in the 2028 election for President of the United States. But I have, before we bring you these beautiful interviews, I have something very interesting to read, and I would like to thank Anonymous for this. I'm not sure who wrote this, but I found this online, and I think it really sums up the demon rats and their agenda in the last several days and weeks. Dear Lauren Underwood, she's a congressman from Illinois, and the hands-off no kings crowd. When millions of illegals were ushered in through the southern border, you said nothing. When they abandoned millions of dollars worth of military equipment in Afghanistan, you said nothing. When they flaunted a two-tier justice system, one for them and one for everyone else, you said nothing. When they covered up the Hunter Biden laptop, you said nothing. When they passed a $1 trillion infrastructure bill that failed miserably, you said nothing. When they forced Americans to take an untested vaccine, you said nothing. When inflation crushed the middle class, you said nothing. When they sent billions to Ukraine, you said nothing. When chemicals polluted the water in East Palestine, Ohio, you ignored it. Tim Ryan ignored it. Vice President J.D. Vance did not ignore it. He was a senator there at the time, and you can remember he spoke softly carrying that big stick, and he glazed it across that water, and all those ugly chemicals, those colors came about. Guess what? You said nothing, demon rats. When they implanted Kamala Harris as the presidential nominee without getting a single primary vote, you said nothing. When billionaire and anti-American George Soros funded dozens of AG elections targeting Republican candidates and the president of the United States, you said nothing. When they turned our classrooms into liberal indoctrination camps, you said nothing. When they spent our tax dollars on inmates and their transition surgeries, you said nothing. When they gave the citizens of Hawaii $700 after losing their entire city, you said nothing. When they gave free money and food and a 5-star hotel lodging to illegal aliens, you said nothing. And when they came for our free speech, you said nothing. When DEI weakened the military and put our national security at risk, you said nothing. And when they colluded with the media to push false reports, you said nothing. When it was open season on law enforcement and criminals reigned, you said nothing. When they weaponized the justice system to take down their political opponents, you said nothing. When the bureaucrats took over the White House and ran the government, and there was an auto pen running our country with the threat of nuclear war coming from the very lips of Russian President Vladimir Putin, you said nothing. When they covered up Biden's rapidly declining mental state, you did not say a damn thing. And when they groomed our kids and when they indoctrinated them with a sex education that was perverted and disgusting, that most people would find repulsive, you said nothing. When the drug epidemic exploded and thousands of people died annually, you said nothing. When they weaponized the intelligence agencies against Americans, you said nothing. And when they spent $45 million on diversity and inclusion scholarships, you said nothing about it. When they let men play in women's sports, you said nothing. When they chanted death to America and burned our flag, you said nothing. You just stayed there. When they shut down energy production, when they emboldened Russia, you said nothing. And when the crime rates in American cities increased, you said nothing. When thousands of veterans were left to sleep out on the streets, you said nothing to your fellow Americans who are in need of food and shelter. When 300,000 migrant children went missing of all different backgrounds, religions, creed. Think about this. When 3-year-olds and 5-year-olds and babies crossed that border, not knowing where their parents were, you said nothing. And when Joe Biden pardoned his friends and family, you said nothing. When they sent billions to Iran and inadvertently funded Hamas, you said nothing. When men were celebrated for pretending to be women, especially in our military and our United States Navy, you said nothing. And when they let a Chinese spy balloon sail across America, you sat there and said nothing. When 50 intelligence agents all lied to bury the Hunter Biden laptop story as he was enjoying cocaine and hookers, you said nothing. When American citizens were taken hostage and held for another year in Gaza, you said nothing. When Facebook conspired with the Biden administration to censor the truth, you said nothing. When they cleaned the streets of San Francisco for the communist Chinese Xi Jinping, you said nothing and allowed Governor Newsom to continue his antics. And when Fauci and the WHO, peddled COVID-19 virus lies and covered it up, the origins, you said nothing to the American people. When they sealed the January 6th commission files and lost them thanks to Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney and Benny Thompson, among other rhino demon rats, you said nothing. And when you saw the corruption, the lies, the bad policy, the American agenda, and said nothing. So please spare us your crocodile tears and your nonsense about no kings. If President Trump was a king, why would he be going to House Speaker Mike Johnson and Senate Majority Leader John Thune in order to pass the big, beautiful bill? All of your fake hysteria, it falls flat. It falls right down to the ash heap of American history. We're going to clean up your mess. We are going to stand for Old Glory, just like we did on Saturday for that Flag Day celebration of 250 years of the United States Army. And quite frankly, this kind of stuff, it grinds my gears, but I'm going to speak up right here on the Voice of Reason. I hope you join me in that mission to tell the truth, to stop the nonsense, and to make America full of common sense once again. And we know the viewership here is all about that, peacefully and patriotically sharing these hopeful stories all across this great land of ours. And Mr. Director, let's toss it now to Miss America 2025, Abby Stockard, a recent interview I shared with this lovely, graceful young woman. Here she is, Miss America, Abby Stockard 2025. Welcome to RSBN and the Voice of Reason. Tell us about your recent visit to the White House and to visit leaders in Congress in our nation's capital.
Absolutely. Also, the song was perfect. I love that you know that. My experience was incredible. I was going to DC for the USO Gala. That's one of Miss America's national partnerships. And so I was headed to DC, and my local congressman is Gary Palmer. And he happened to make it work where I could go to the Oval Office and have a meeting with President Trump. So I was so pumped, did not really know what to expect. We were told we were only going to have 7 minutes, maybe shake hands, get a picture. But when I walked into the Oval Office, President Trump actually invited me and Congressman Palmer to sit down. And we ended up speaking with him for close to 20 minutes. So what I got to talk about was something that I'm super passionate about. My service initiative, or which, every contestant has to create. Mine's about cystic fibrosis awareness because of my very best friend. And so I got to tell Mr. President about my initiative and some of the advocacy projects that I've been implementing across the country. What was really cool is his communications advisor, she actually related to CF. She ended up losing her cousin the week before at the age of 31. So I think it resonated really well with President Trump. We kind of made that cool connection there. One of our other partnerships is the Promise Fund by Ambassador Nancy Brinker. So we also got to invite one of their members to the Oval Office as well. What they do is they focus on screenings for cervical and breast cancer. So we got to talk about that with President Trump as well. He was very personable, super receptive, which I was very, very appreciative of. He ended the meeting by giving me and then my best friend Maddie with cystic fibrosis to bring back home to her one of his presidential seals. So that was a really neat keepsake. He says he rarely gives them out. And so I thought it was so thoughtful. He not just gave one to me, but he gave one to my best friend as well, who is living with this disease. So it was an amazing experience. Definitely one that I will cherish forever, and probably one of the highlights of my year as Miss America.
Abby, you had an opportunity that few Americans actually get to see the inside of the Oval Office, such history that took place there. What's it like to speak directly to the Commander-in-Chief and to advocate for something that's so near and dear to your heart?
I mean, it was truly an honor of a lifetime. I'm not even kidding. I was physically shaking. My hands were sweating because I've seen Mr. President on the news outlets all the time, but to actually sit down and talk to him face to face and just see how respectful he was of me and what I had to say, it really resonated in me and went really far with my, thoughts towards what's going on in our government today. So it was really cool. I mean, I never imagined I'd visit the Oval Office, and I took a minute to just look around all the portraits of past presidents hanging on the wall. I mean, it was surreal.
And tell us more about Miss America and beauty pageants in general in this great land of ours, because it's not only about the physical appearance of beauty, but also the thought of this legacy, this great nation, nearly 250 years young, and again, that advocacy piece. Where does this entire pageant tradition stand in the United States? Because we've seen over the course of the last few years where it might have been challenged, or some voices saying, oh, this exploits young women. What are your thoughts on not only having the honor of being Miss America, but where pageants stand in 2025?
Well, this is so much more than a beauty pageant. We have been an organization that has been vetted by the American public for over 100 years. Our organization is championed by thousands of young women, ages 14 all the way to 28, who are serving as local brand ambassadors across their community, but also across the state. These young women are using their voice to enact change and make an impact across their community. I never grew up competing in pageants. I never thought I would, but what drew me in was the scholarship piece. We are a scholarship organization. It's an opportunity for young women to receive scholarships to relieve a financial load. That's why I joined, and I've acquired over $89,000 in tuition scholarships. Not only that, you have to create a platform or a service initiative. So every contestant has created something that they are passionate about. For me, like I said, mine's cystic fibrosis, and I've worked to raise over $200,000 for the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, and I'm now a national ambassador for cystic fibrosis. It has been extremely rewarding, probably the most fulfilling part of my year as I travel across the country. What I'm hoping to show people as Miss America is that this organization truly is so much more than wearing a crown and sash and taking pictures with people. It's an opportunity to use your voice, to engage with people of all ages and backgrounds, and truly leave a positive impact everywhere she goes.
Now, the voice of reason is so loving and endorses that public service component that you're talking about. We believe that no life, no career can truly be fully fulfilled without the public service side of things. How will this then go into the rest of your career, as really you're just getting started?
Right. So I'm actually a current student at Auburn still. I am halfway through their College of Nursing program. So when I won Miss America, I had already done 1 year. And then this fall, I'm fortunate enough that they're going to hold my spot in the cohort. So in September, I'll be going back to nursing school. I have 1 more year till I graduate with my Bachelor of Science in Nursing. And so I think that ties in perfectly with this public service component, because as a nurse, that's all you're doing. You are at the bedside, forming that one-on-one relationship with patients, ensuring that they receive the highest quality of care. And so I'm excited to take those social and communication skills that I've learned as Miss America now and apply that to the healthcare field.
And we are so proud of you, Auburn Strong, because we happen to be the home right here in Auburn of RSBN. And we share that, and that's why I'm wearing my Auburn University colors today and the pin, because you're our hometown hero. We have Miss America right here in Auburn, Alabama, the loveliest village on the plains. How would you like to encourage all of the young women looking up to you? Because really, you're an icon, you're a role model. You are dialoguing with people, not only in nonprofits, in the business world, in government, but also the President of the United States, who we cover on a daily basis.
Yeah, I would encourage young women, first of all, to know that they're enough just the way that they are, to chase their dreams no matter how big or how small they may be. I want young women to know that their worth is not tied to the opinion of others, and never let anyone tell you that you can't accomplish anything because of who you are or where you come from. I truly believe that there is no limit to what you can achieve when you believe in yourself. And so I would encourage women, whatever dream that they're pursuing, to always be authentically themselves. If anything, that's what I've learned. I never imagined I'd be crowned Miss America because I didn't think I fit the mold. But I went into that week being authentically Abby, and it carried me this far. So no matter what they're doing, stay true to who they are and never let anyone take that away.
She's beauty and she's grace. She's Miss America 2025, Abby Stockard. A wonderful message, an authentic message, which inspires all of us, regardless of where we're at on our journey. Where can we find your advocacy, and where can we follow you and the great upcoming 2026 Miss America pageant?
Oh, it's sad to even think about. You can go online and search missamerica.org to receive all the information, or if you're on social media, it's just at Miss America.
God bless you, Abby. We look forward to having you on Miss America 2025 once again on The Voice of Reason. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you very soon.
Thank you.
Thank you to Miss America 2025, Abby Stockard. They are now in full swing with Miss America 2026, many of the state competitions taking place. So a nice, lovely, lighthearted interview and an inspiration for those young women out there and young men to see leadership in action. And it's so great to see a timeless institution such as Miss America funding the scholarships for young women to live their dreams and to serve their community and this beautiful, great country of ours. And Mr. Director, I like to have discussions like that at the end of the day, because if you've been with us since the top of the hour, that list really grinded my gears, and I'm upset that you had a situation take place when these so-called protesters, let's call them what they are, rioters in most of these big cities, made up another slogan of no kings. And it's almost laughable to look at, because President Trump clearly is the president of a constitutional republic. He has to go through Congress to pass bills and then sign them into law. And then you have a Supreme Court that determines whether or not it's constitutional. And we know from Federalist Papers, specifically number 58 and number 71, that the judiciary is supposed to be the least powerful. James Madison and Alexander Hamilton in 1788, very clear about their writings when it comes to the role of the judiciary. And it's interesting to watch, because whether it is Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, along with General Dan Kane, Raisin Kane, as President Trump puts it, they both have to listen to these demon rats elected at the federal level, attempting to get their TikTok moment, their 15 seconds of fame, hopefully less, because they are putting out falsehoods, lies, just not telling the truth, and trying to embarrass a cabinet that is unlike any other in the history of this great nation. A team of Republicans, Democrats, independents, and of all other belief systems coming together in order to make America great again. And we celebrate that on this fine day of Juneteenth, June 19th, 1865, when those slaves in Texas did not know that they were free. It was the Union Army on Order Number 3 by that fantastic general who helped get that information out there. And for countless new American lives, freedom, they found it. They would sing on those fields, swing low, sweet chariot, praying to God, hoping one day for that freedom that is promised in those founding documents. And we here at the Voice of Reason and at Right Side Broadcasting Network celebrate with you today, and a great day to be out there with family and friends, loving this beautiful nation. Just like last Saturday on Flag Day, such amazing things to celebrate with Old Glory and this Jubilee year that's leading into America 250 years of this great constitutional republic, this experiment, and like this new show on Right Side Broadcasting Network, we cut through it all the noise, and give clarity and voice to all of those who seek to make a difference in the United States, with some songs, with some dance, with that classic Western dashing and daring culture that is unafraid of divine providence, the history of this great nation, and the truth that some would like to bury under the sand and pervert, like those morons who are rioting in these cities. We know that President Trump is within his constitutional authority to activate the National Guard, just as President Dwight D. Eisenhower did to protect civil rights in 1957, so those could receive that equal education, regardless of the color of their skin, regardless of their background. President Trump doing that today, just as President Dwight D. Eisenhower did way back when in 1957. And can you believe it? We have a presidential series already right here on Right Side Broadcasting Network, brought to you by the Voice of Reason, with the first declared Republican presidential candidate. This is part 2 of this wonderful interview with Gary Barv, who is seeking the 2028 Republican nomination for President of the United States. What specific issues, as you've covered with securing the border, but what can you bring to it? Because when I look at the vice president's background, when I look at your background, very inspiring for different reasons. You have the vice president who grew up in Appalachia, who went up against the impossible, getting that JD, not only his initials, but to study law, to practice law, going on to become a senator and vice president, also a business person. And you as well, living in several different places, running for office. It's not your first rodeo. You've run in Florida and out west in California, I believe, and also having lived in India. So both of you, the same age, having a lot of experience that maybe other 40, 41-year-olds don't necessarily have at this point in their careers. But what specifically on policy separates you between the potential frontrunner for the nomination?
Well, I think first thing I'll say is I don't think J.D. Vance is a potential frontrunner for the nomination in 2028. And we'll see that play out over the next 2.5, 3 years whenever J.D. Vance announces, right? But let me say this. J.D. Vance became senator because of President Donald J. Trump's endorsement, and he became vice president because President Trump won the election, right? Who is leading the country, Robert? President Donald J. Trump is unequivocally the leader of our country, and J.D. Vance is on the ticket with President Donald J. Trump. That's why he's the vice president. So let's get that straight, my friend. And so let me say this, all right? You said, every person has I'll say this. Every person has a different way of upbringing or a different background in life, right? So I'll share a little bit about me. So like you said, I was born in Summit, New Jersey in 1984. So I am 40 years old. And, right after my my family relocated to India when I was about 4.5 years old. And, I would have loved to grow up in our country, the greatest country in the world, the United States of America. But, at 4.5 years old, you don't really have much of a say in these decisions, right? And so right after my undergrad, I came back home to Massachusetts. I was working in the financial technology industry. I then relocated to Dallas, Texas, got my master's in business administration from Southern Methodist University in Dallas, Texas, in entrepreneurial strategy and marketing. And, at the final stages of my MBA course, tragedy struck my life. I was diagnosed with a clinical depression-related illness right at the final stages of my MBA course. I will call it the former clinical depression-related illness because I've now made a complete recovery, and I thank Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. I thank my mom and my dad. I thank the medical staff and my friends for giving me the ability to conquer this really, really horrific former clinical depression-related illness. But, I learned a lot from this battle with former clinical depression-related illness as well. I learned to never, ever, ever, ever give up and to keep fighting for our country, the country that I love, the greatest country in the world, the United States of America. And I also learned about this from President Donald J. Trump's tremendous inspirational books, videos, and interviews. And so I thank President Donald J. Trump as well for giving me the ability to conquer this really horrific former clinical depression-related illness. And so then, in spite of the diagnosis, I completed my MBA. I relocated to California and was working in the technology industry. But I realized, Robert, that technology is not my calling in life. And I have nothing against the technology industry, but technology is not my calling in life. And I wanted to serve the country. And so I ran for city council in Santa Clara, California in the 2020 election as a Republican supporter of President Trump. Robert, I actually wore a red Make Santa Clara Great hat during that campaign. And which was given to me by the then vice chair of the California Republican Party, Peter Kuo. And, we had a tremendous result. We had a tremendous result in this campaign. There was no way to practically win that election. Santa Clara, California, District 6, it's a very liberal place, one of the most liberal areas of our country. But we got approximately 23% of the vote in a three-person race. And there were, to my memory, only about 17% Republicans in the district that I was running in. So we had a tremendous result. I then relocated to Lynchburg, Virginia, got baptized at Thomas Road Baptist Church, which is in Lynchburg, Virginia. I became a student at Liberty University, which is one of the largest Christian schools in America. And then I ran for U.S. Congress in Florida's 23rd district as a Republican supporter of President Trump. And, I've been tremendously positively inspired by President Donald J. Trump, like you wouldn't even believe it. And so there's this great book by President Trump. It's titled Think Big by President Trump. In my opinion, it's the greatest book ever written after the Bible. And, I have studied that book on audiobook. I've studied that book. I've read it 4 to 5 times. And in the book, President Donald J. Trump talks about a number of advice points and a lot of knowledge. And he says, never, ever, ever, ever give up. go against the tide, which means go against the current, go against the convention. He says, love the country, serve the country, dream big and bold. He says, dream big and bold. And, I said, I want to do all these things. I want to run for president. I want to run for president. I want to think big. And, I decided to do that. And, it's been a tremendous start to the campaign. I'll say this. I'm going to answer your question more directly right now. This is a weave, right, like President Trump does. But I'll answer your question directly right now as to why I believe I am dominating the 2028 presidential election cycle right now. And I'll say it right now. Number one, I am the biggest, most loyal supporter of the greatest and the 47th president of the United States of America, Donald J. Trump. I say it unequivocally. Anyone who has watched this entire interview until this point would know that for a fact. I don't think there's any doubt about it. I'm the biggest, most loyal supporter of President Donald J. Trump in America. Second, in my opinion, on the political stage, I believe I'm the most courageous person to run for office in the 2028 presidential election cycle. I said some things against gangs and cartels. I've directly addressed these gangs and cartels, on like national TV and a lot of networks. I've done about 25 media shows in the last, approximately 5-6 months. And, I believe, in my opinion, I'm the most courageous person on the political stage to run in the 2028 presidential election cycle. I mean, Robert, I could get shot at any time because I've taken on these gangs and cartels in a very strong way. But, I want to say this. I'm not comparing my courage with the tremendous courage that our police, sheriffs, ICE, military, veterans, firefighters, and first responders have. I have tremendous respect and admiration for their courage and their selflessness. But I'm just saying on the political stage, I believe, in my opinion, I say it hopefully not in a pompous way, it doesn't come across in a pompous way. I believe I'm the most courageous person to run politically on the political stage in the 2028 presidential election cycle. The third thing I'll say is I'm glorifying God. I'm glorifying Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. And look, I respect all religions, Robert. I respect all religions, but I am Christian. I believe in Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. I believe the Bible is the Word of God. And I believe I'm glorifying Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior on, the campaign trail in a way that I believe no one in the history of our country has done on the political stage. And so these are three reasons why I believe I am dominating the 2028 presidential election cycle as the only viable candidate running. And, the final thing I'll say is, maybe you be the judge of this, Robert. I'll ask you, maybe you will go one way, maybe you won't. But let me say this. I believe, in my opinion, I am the best candidate interview in America right now for the 2028 presidential election cycle. And I said that earlier during the interview as well, but I'll say it again to sort of answer the entire question. And these are some of the reasons why I believe I've got a tremendous shot at winning the election on November 7, 2028, and becoming the next and the 40th president of the United States of America as the biggest, most loyal supporter of President Donald J. Trump in the country. And so that's my rather long-winded answer to your question, my friend.
Well, and my job is to ask those questions so that the viewers can ultimately decide this come 2028. And I love the enthusiasm. I love the principles. I love that people are standing up, especially in the millennial generation, to take on the near impossible. But what I'm trying to dive into in this presidential series is what truly sets you apart on policy. For example, where do you differ or support President Trump on those 20 beautiful promises that became RNC policy? And because of your experience, and thank you for being so open with sharing that success in your life, thanks to God Almighty on high. But
Jesus
how
Christ,
do you
yes.
approach solving clinical depression, for example, in the United States? Because we have a country right now that is arguably extraordinarily mentally ill. Part of that's because of big pharma. But what specific policies will separate you from those who are taking on these evil cartels, who are already closing our border, who are reopening our economy? And where can you dive into that to make a difference and to also make your name known to people in all 50 states?
Great question. So let me answer it this way. I'm going to give you specific policies that I have, mentioned on my campaign social media. I've talked about it in speeches, media interviews. I'll say it right now. The first thing I'm going to say, however, is I am supporting, and this is a campaign promise, all right? I'm supporting President Donald J. Trump's America First agenda, which is on my campaign website, www.garybarforamerica.com. I'm supporting that America First agenda 100%. Until November 7th, 2028, which is election day. And then after that, if I get the great honor to, be elected president of the United States of America as a Republican supporter of President Trump, I've made a campaign promise that I will always make decisions for our country, keeping America first and you, our American people, first. But I'm going to give you some specific policies, all right? Let me talk about a patriotic policy first. You love our great American flag, right? I've seen RSBN so many times, and you always have that great American flag. I love the great American flag. And you have that great American flag on your screen even when like you're talking and things like that. So let me say this, my friend. Our great American flag sometimes flies what they call half staff or half mast. They call it half staff or half mast, right? And that is to show respect to certain situations and events as a country. And, for example, when Jimmy Carter died recently, the flag was flying half staff or half mast. And, there's this great speech by President Donald J. Trump. And in the speech, he says, have you challenged accepted wisdom? And I said to myself, I want to challenge accepted wisdom in this circumstance about our great American flag. And I said to myself, I want to see our great American flag fly high and proud all the time, 24/7, 365. I want our friends to see our great American flag fly high and proud. I want to see our enemies to see our great American flag fly high and proud. I want to see our great American people see our great American flag fly high and proud. So I came up with a policy and I said, and this is a campaign promise, if I get elected the next and the 48th president of the United States of America as a Republican supporter of President Donald J. Trump, the American flag will always and forever, 24/7, 365, fly high and proud, full staff, full mast all the time. And we will find an alternate way to show respect to certain situations and events. And, I was on another show a few days back and, someone called in and asked me about the policy and I mentioned this. And, they said, well, how does it directly impact the American people, this policy? And I said this, look, this is a patriotic policy that will have a tremendous emotional, positive, patriotic impact on our great American people. And we need patriotism in our country. Look, Robert, you have to love the country. You have to love the flag. And when I say you, I mean any American. You have to love the country. You have to love the flag. If you don't love the country, if you don't love the flag, you've lost me there. Because we are unequivocally the greatest country in the world. I'll say this, Robert. Look, I've traveled to like 15 countries, 20 countries, something like that across the world, right? And I've seen it. Some countries are great. Some countries are okay. Some countries are not so great. I'll say it unequivocally. The United States of America is the greatest country in the world. And I'll say it. The Trump Republican Party, President Trump has completely redefined the Republican Party, and it is now the People's Republican Party with President Donald J. Trump as the leader of the Republican Party and really the leader of the free world and the 47th president of the United States of America. Look, I'll say this. Our great American police, sheriffs, ICE, military, veterans, firefighters, first responders, our great American farmers. I love our great American farmers. Someone from Iowa, I used to reside in Iowa, someone from Iowa who is a great American patriotic farmer, Trump supporter, has actually joined my campaign recently. Our great American oil and gas workers, coal mine workers, restaurant workers, bartenders, caddies, small business owners, big business owners. Look, these are the people who built our great United States of America. You built our country, and now this is your Republican Party, and I'll say it, America is the American people's America. I'll say it unequivocally and very confidently. So look, patriotism is a very important thing that our country really, really wants and needs, and we have it in a large capacity right now. But because of President Donald J. Trump's inspirational patriotic leadership, we want that patriotism to grow across the country. So that's one policy. I'll give you another policy, all right? I can talk about this for a long time. I'll give you another policy, my friend. So look, there are 33,000 great American veterans who are homeless right now. They're homeless. And I said, this is a travesty. It's a travesty that our great American veterans are homeless. These are great American veterans who served our country. They are ready to take a bullet for our country. Many of them have already taken a bullet for our country. And it breaks my heart to see that 33,000 great American veterans are homeless. And so I came up with a policy. I said, if I get elected the 48th president of the United States of America as a Republican supporter of President Trump, I will make sure we have zero veteran homelessness, zero veteran joblessness, and complete mental health services for our great American veterans. I'll give you an example, right? People say, well, how are you going to get this done, right? And, President Trump has already, through, I believe, an executive order, taken steps towards helping our great American veterans, our great American veterans, President Trump has probably about like upper 90% favorability rating with the great American veterans. But I'll say this, look, let's look at the Russia-Ukraine conflict that's going on right now, right? Now, America has contributed or donated to Ukraine, what is it, like $300 billion or $350 billion, billion with a B, towards Ukraine for the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Now, look, I support President Trump's initiative. He says the killing has to stop between the Russia-Ukraine conflict, right? I support that. I like that initiative. But I, Gary Barr, am saying this unequivocally. I am the America First candidate. I love our great American people. I love our country, the greatest country in the world, the United States of America. So I came up with a policy. I said, if America donates or contributes a certain percentage of the money that has gone towards Ukraine to fight, the Ukraine-Russia conflict, which is not America's war, I have empathy, but it's not America's war. And so I said, if we donate a small percentage even of that $350 billion towards our great American veterans who served our country, many of them took a bullet for our American people, many of them took a bullet for our American flag, wouldn't that be the right investment for our country? I believe it would be. And so I will get this done. If I get elected the 48th president of the United States of America, I will make sure that there is zero veteran homelessness, zero veteran joblessness, and complete mental health services for our great American veterans. And I don't know how much time we have. I'll share another policy with you, all right? Let me say that. Do we have time for another policy?
Well, I'm actually going to save that because I think that was a really extraordinary pledge that we don't hear from many people, Gary. And we thank you for coming on for this presidential series. And it would be nice to hear from you again when the campaign gets underway. So keep us updated on all of this.
Well, let me
again, part of our presidential series. But where can we find you online once again for our viewers at home?
Yes, sir. Let me quickly say this. The campaign has started, my friend. The campaign has started. I filed my Form 1. I filed my Form 2 with the FEC. The campaign has started. I'm the only official viable candidate running for president in the 2028 election as the biggest, most loyal supporter of the greatest and the 47th president of the United States of America, Donald J. Trump. And so I'll answer your question as well, my friend Robert. My campaign website is www.garybarforamerica.com, and I'll spell it for your great viewers and listeners, my friend. Gary is Gary, Barv is B as in boy, A as in America, R as in Republican, V as in victory, E as in elephant, for America.com. And, my links to the campaign social media are on the campaign website as well. And, I really appreciate you, Robert, for giving me the immense honor and opportunity to interview with you and with the incredible RSBN Right Side Broadcasting Network. And again, thank you so much. And I'll quickly like to say a line that I say at the completion of many of my speeches. I'll quickly say this, Robert. Is that okay? I'll say one line. We are one nation under God, and in God we trust. May God bless you. And
Amen.
May God bless the United States of America, the greatest country on earth. Thank you, and let's win this. And thank you, Robert, again, for the immense honor and opportunity for me to interview with you. Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
God bless you, Gary Barv, candidate for President of the United States in the 2028 election, part of RSBN's presidential series. Stay safe out there and keep up the good work.
Thank you to 2028 presidential candidate on the Republican side, Gary Barv, part 2 of our discussion. And I have to say, Gary is on the road. He'll be in New York. He'll be in Florida. He is hitting that campaign trail to reach out to you, the voters, and all are welcome in our presidential series. Republicans, Democrats, Independents, Libertarians, Socialists, and Green Party members, among many countless others who might even start their own new party, perhaps, in order to seek the White House in 2028. We want to give you, right here, the viewers of the Voice of Reason, time to sift through these candidates to find out what they stand for and to make their case to you, who ultimately employ them at your house, the People's House, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, the White House in your federal city of Washington, D.C. And Mr. Director and I were talking earlier about that fact of being a private citizen seeking the presidency of the United States. Name ID, a crucial factor here, but some great topics to touch on with Gary, specifically with mental health, mental illness, and especially protecting our veterans. After visiting Washington, D.C. last week, I did not know of the homeless who might have been veterans or non-veterans regardless. Sad to see in our federal city, especially among Chinatown residents, so many homeless in our streets. And it's sad to reflect upon that. And there are many ways that we can fix this. And the Voice of Reason stands with those in the positive populist movement in order to use public and private entities to help those on the street in the United States of America. One of those things would be bringing back the insane asylums and helping those to get off of these terrible drugs, and of course, securing the border, as President Trump has done, going from May of last year, thousands pouring over this border, to right now, down to zero. According to the reports, according to the facts, and we here on RSBN and the Voice of Reason, always bringing you those facts as we celebrate a wonderful holiday today, Juneteenth, as it marks the celebration of 1865 and freedom for Black Americans who were once slaves. Even though on June 19th of 1865, when the Union Army reached Galveston, Texas, to read the proclamation, it was after 2 years when Abraham Lincoln had been murdered. So an amazing thing to reflect upon today, regardless of your color, creed, your background. We're all Americans. It is American history, and it's worth celebrating at the Voice of Reason. Today's winners and losers. The winner, who I never thought I would showcase his name on the Voice of Reason, the former governor of California, the governator, Arnold Schwarzenegger. Did you catch him over the last couple of days on that goofy show known as The View? Looking at Crazy Joy Behar and her antics when it came to distorting the message on illegal immigration. And Arnold Schwarzenegger sharing his brave story as an immigrant from Austria, coming with literally $10 in his pocket in order to become a 7-time Mr. Olympia, a famous bodybuilder, a great actor in his prime, was the biggest action star in the world, and grossing income that far surpassed any actor at his time, inspiring the likes of The Rock, who is now a blockbuster celebrity hero post his World Wrestling Entertainment days. And, of course, serving and becoming the governor of California. Only in this country can a story like Arnold's happen. And he reflected upon that on The View. He did not take the bait, and he said, it's different to have immigrants coming in here legally and borrowing that time, that treasure that is America, and becoming assimilated, wanting to become an American, because that's the truth and the greatness of this nation, that wherever you come from, wherever you're born, you can end that story here as an American and swear allegiance to Old Glory. It's a beautiful thing. And as we can see, the Trumpinator, a new asset to this beautiful set here on the Voice of Reason. And as we go through this wonderful show from week to week on Thursdays at 6 o'clock Eastern, you might see some additions to the set. And if you wish to send in some feedback at rsbn.tv, if you'd like to see a certain bobblehead. But the Trumpinator right behind me celebrating this great moment in American history. The loser of this week, none other than the governor of Illinois, Jelly Belly Pritzker, and the fact that he continues to go on the talk show radios and talk to those far-left globalist activists, all while continuing to break federal law by harboring illegal aliens in his home state of Illinois. My question for the governor: what does illegal immigration do to benefit the people of Chicago, Illinois? What does illegal immigration do to benefit the whole state of Illinois? And sir, you are always welcome here on the Voice of Reason. Let's dialogue it. Let's debate it. And perhaps you can join as part of our presidential series because we know that you lust for the White House to be the president of the United States even more than you lust for your cheeseburger dinner, perhaps 2 or 3 or 4. And God forbid drones actually start delivering those cheeseburgers from McDonald's to your residence, because I think you would bankrupt the fast food outlet known as McDonald's, among many others. But regardless of that, please come on the show. Let's talk about how your policies are harming the American people and the great state of Illinois. We tell it like it is here, with punchlines, with smiles, with laughs, with some serious topics, and with some music and charisma. So we hope you join us every Thursday night at 6 o'clock p.m. Eastern on The Voice of Reason, for all things culture, politics, music, sports, and we'll have some very wonderful guests over the course of the next several weeks. I'm Robert McNeily. It's always a joy to be with you on Right Side Broadcasting Network and The Voice of Reason. Make sure you hug the ones you love, spend time with your friends, and have a lovely weekend as we begin this Thirsty Thursday celebrating Juneteenth, a day that all Americans should learn about, should honor, and thank the great state of Texas for, because people fought for freedom. They fought for the truth. They fought and sacrificed and died so that those founding principles can be protected now nearly 250 years later. As that gentleman asked outside of Constitution Hall, Mr. Franklin, what kind of government did you give us? A constitutional republic, if you can keep it. My friends, we stand on the shoulders of patriots, and we stand together celebrating this Jubilee year of the United States of America. For the Voice of Reason, for my colleagues on Right Side Broadcasting Network, I'm Robert McNeily. Good night. God bless. We'll see you soon.